Story 1. I only answered the call because it came from Ryan. He never called anymore. None of them did. They had a way of fading out of my life, dissolving into the background hum of the mundane, once they'd seen what we'd seen. I was in the nursery, feeding my daughter. 2 months old, a tiny universe of soft sighs, warm milk, and blankets that still smelled new. My wife was asleep in the bedroom after taking the night shift. The bottle trembled in my hand as the phone buzzed, its harsh glow shattering the dim serenity of the room. Ryan didn't even bother with hello. We got Hell House. My stomach turned into a cold knot. The words weren't just words. They were a brand, a scar pressed forever into our memory. No, double rate, he pushed. The greed in his voice was only a mask, paper thin over the desperation beneath. One night. Just film and go. Maya's in. Eli too. I shook my head, though he couldn't see me. A frantic refusal. We said never again. We promised. We need the money, and he hesitated, and I already knew what he'd say. The low blow. You said you'd help if things got bad. I glanced at the baby monitor. On the tiny monochrome screen, my daughter slept. Her miniature fist curled against her cheek. Her lip quivered, mirroring the same distressed twitch my wife made in her sleep, as if she could sense the weight of the decision pressing against her small, perfect world. I should have said no, but I went. Of course I did. Hell House hadn't changed. It still squatted at the end of Grayson Lane like a rotting tooth, brick and splintered wood forming a gaping maw. The lawn grew in uneven spirals, recoiling from whatever lay buried underneath. The windows sweated condensation even in the cold night, blurring the darkness inside like tears. We all knew the stories. The couple who tried to spend a night, the husband who vanished, the wife who checked herself into a sanitarium, her mind fractured into a mosaic of silent screams. The online whispers, the rumors, the legends. But we weren't tourists. We were the team that cracked the Baxter Crypt case. We debunked Larrabee Asylum. We filmed the Woods Hollow entity. We knew the difference between a trick and the real thing. And Hell House was the real thing. Inside, the air was thick, heavy, rancid with the smell of burnt hair and old pennies. The living room was a shrine to unspoken horrors. The pentagram was still there, sprawling across the floorboards, etched in dried blood so black it looked like shriveled leather. No amount of sanding or chemical wash had ever removed it. Eli wouldn't step near it. His shadow clung to the walls. Maya's cameras glitched constantly, screens flickering with static like a dying heart monitor. Batteries drained within minutes. Ryan joked about demons and faulty wiring, but even he shut up when the knocking began upstairs. Not banging, knocking. Slow, measured. The distinct sound of knuckles rapping gently on wood, like someone trapped inside a coffin. We ignored it. That was the deal. Film. Don't provoke and get out. But at 2:43 a.m., the knocking stopped. The silence that followed was worse. It pressed into our ears, a suffocating void. Then came the buzzing, a high-pitched whine like 1,000 flies trapped in my skull. Eli's camera, the only one still working, flickered and went dark. What was that? Maya whispered. Ryan shook his head. Faulty wiring. Let's just finish the... He froze. His eyes widened. A shadow stretched from the end of the hallway. Long, thin, moving like liquid. It wrapped around Ryan's ankles before any of us could move. It dragged him into the dark room. No scream, just a wet thump. Then silence. The door creaked shut. Maya screamed, a piercing note of terror, but another shadow rose from the floor, engulfing her like a tide of smoke. Her body blurred, dissolving into the darkness as if erased. Her scream cut off mid-breath. Her camera clattered to the floor, its light dying with her. I turned to Eli, frozen, paralyzed by terror. A third shadow uncoiled from the ceiling, tendrils of black wrapping around his head. He was yanked upward like a puppet on invisible strings, limbs jerking unnaturally before vanishing into the ceiling with a final, sickening crack. I ran. The stairs blurred beneath my feet. My lungs burned. My skull throbbed with pressure, as if something hot and metallic were driving into it. I reached the bottom, and pain exploded at the back of my head. I fell hard, my flashlight spinning, its beam catching the pentagram again in the living room. I clawed for the door. It wouldn't budge. Locked from the outside. The buzzing in my head grew unbearable. And then, a whisper, right behind my ear. "You brought it home." Through the grimy window, I saw it. A gaunt figure of shadow stood just outside, watching. Its head tilted, raising one impossibly long finger to its lips. A bloody smear stained the glass where its hand had rested, the same shape as the pentagram. I didn't try the door again. I smashed through a kitchen window, tearing skin from bone as glass shredded me, and stumbled to my van. My hands shook violently as I turned the key. The engine sputtered, mercifully alive. The buzzing faded. The road stretched ahead. Empty. Silent. I drove until the sky turned purple with dawn. When I got home, the porch light was on. My wife had left it burning for me. The door was unlocked. The baby monitor was on. Its screen was black. Static hissed. Then, laughter. Distorted. Wrong. Not my wife's. Not my daughter's. Ryan's. Then Maya's. Then Eli's. And finally, a whisper. Clear. Cold. Terrifyingly close. "You brought it home." The monitor flickered once. I saw the crib, the floor, and the pentagram, smeared in fresh blood across the nursery carpet. Story 2. We weren't supposed to be friends. Not really. Kids like us never are. But somehow, we found each other. Two shadows clinging together in the gray light of childhood. We shared everything. Homework, bus rides, sleepovers, where the nights stretched long with whispers and half-remembered dreams. Our mothers even became friends, laughing in kitchens while we hid in bedrooms, inventing worlds only we could see. It should have been ordinary, innocent. But something darker was always circling, just out of sight. On the school bus, there was a boy who made sure to remind us we didn't belong. His voice was sharp, cruel in the way only children can be, every word a stone aimed to bruise. He sat in the row behind us, kicking the seats, whispering venom, daring us to snap. We never did. We were quiet, holding our anger like a secret pact. I can still remember his smirk reflected in the bus window, the way the morning sun made his face look stretched, unnatural, like it was grinning just a little too wide. But then, one day, he was gone. No warning, no explanation, no whispers in the hallway about transfers or moving away. He just disappeared. The bus was quieter after that. Our lives slipped back into their rhythm, or so it seemed. It happened in the garage. I was searching through old boxes when my hand brushed against fabric. I pulled it free and froze. It was a t-shirt. His t-shirt. The same faded logo. The same worn sleeves he used to tug at when he got nervous. Only now it was stiff, like it had been soaked and dried in something I didn't want to name. I remember the smell first. Metallic, sharp, and undeniable. And then the realization. My mother. She must have known. Must have done something. I stood there in the dark garage, the shirt limp in my trembling hands, listening to the distant sound of her laughter in the kitchen. The laughter I had always trusted. The laughter that now sounded wrong, hollow, carrying a weight I couldn't bear. I thought of that boy on the bus, his taunts, his grin, and I thought of the empty seat that had never been filled again. The truth pressed down on me like a suffocating hand. My mother had taken care of him. Not out of anger, not out of hate, but out of something else, something darker, deeper, a fierce, possessive love that would destroy anyone who dared to hurt me. And standing there, clutching that ruined shirt, I realized something that chilled me to the bone. She would do it again. Story 3. I only answered the call because it came from Ryan. He doesn't call anymore. None of them do. They have a way of disappearing, fading quietly into the dull hum of ordinary life after they've seen what we've seen. That night, I was feeding my daughter. She was 2 months old, a fragile universe of soft sighs and the sweet smell of milk and new blankets. My wife had finally drifted into sleep after the night shift. The nursery was dim, peaceful, the bottle trembling slightly in my tired hand when the phone buzzed. Ryan didn't even say hello. "We got Hell House." The words landed like a knife in my stomach, a scar reopening. "No," I whispered. "Double rate," he pressed, trying to hide the desperation in his voice. "One night. Just film and go. Maya's in, Eli too." I shook my head in silence. We had promised never again. Never. But then Ryan said the one thing I couldn't ignore. "You said you'd help, if things got bad." I looked at the baby monitor. On the tiny screen, my daughter twitched in her sleep. A fist pressed against her cheek. It was as if she knew, as if she could sense the decision being made. A silent weight settled over her fragile little world. I should have said no. But I went. Hell House was still there, squatting at the end of Grayson Lane like a rotting tooth. Its windows wept condensation even in the cold. The lawn grew in spirals, curling away from something buried beneath. It wasn't a place, it was a presence. Inside, the air was thick, metallic, clinging to our throats like ash. The living room hadn't changed. The pentagram, a vast, sprawling star of dried blood, was still burned into the floorboards. No amount of sanding could erase it. It looked like old, shriveled leather now, cracked and sunken, but alive in some awful way. Eli wouldn't go near it. Maya's cameras kept glitching, batteries draining in seconds. Ryan joked about wiring, but even he went quiet when the knocking started upstairs. Not banging, knocking. Slow, measured, like someone tapping on a coffin lid. We ignored it. That was the deal. Just film and go. But at 2:43 a.m., the knocking stopped. The silence that followed pressed into my lungs like stone. A high-pitched buzzing filled my ears, crawling under my skin. We were all in the hallway when Eli's last working camera went dark. "What was that?" Maya whispered. And then it began. A shadow, impossibly long and thin, uncoiled from the end of the hall and wrapped around Ryan's ankles. It dragged him into the darkness. One sharp, wet thump and silence. Maya screamed. Another shadow rose behind her, diffuse and heavy, swallowing her whole. Her scream cut off mid-breath. Her camera clattered to the ground, its light fading to nothing. Eli froze, too afraid even to run. A third shadow dropped from the ceiling, its tendrils twisting around his head and throat. His body jerked like a puppet, before vanishing upward, with a final, cracking snap. I ran. The stairs blurred beneath me. My chest burned. My skull pounded with fire. At the bottom step, something struck the back of my head. I stumbled. My flashlight spinning across the living room, its beam catching the bloody pentagram, gleaming faintly as if mocking me. I clawed at the front door. It wouldn't budge, locked from the outside. And then a whisper, close enough to feel the breath on my ear. "You brought it home." Through the grimy window, I saw it. A gaunt shadow stood outside, tilting its head, pressing one long, blood-smeared finger to the glass, to its lips. I didn't try the door again. I ran through the kitchen, through broken furniture, smashing a window with my own camera, ignoring the glass tearing into my arm. I didn't stop until I was in the van, shaking so badly I could barely turn the key. The engine roared. The buzzing in my ears faded. The road stretched ahead, dark, empty, endless. I thought I had escaped, but when I got home, the sky was bruised purple, dawn still hours away. The porch light was on, the door was unlocked, the baby monitor glowed faintly. The screen was black, then static, then laughter. Ryan's laugh, then Maya's, then Eli's, twisted, faint, wrong. And finally, the whisper. You brought it home. The screen flickered once, revealing the nursery, the crib, the floor, and smeared across the carpet, a pentagram. The cry of my daughter pierced the silence. I rushed in. The door slammed shut behind me. The air reeked of burnt metal and hair. 3 figures stood over the crib, tall and faceless, shimmering at the edges. My wife was gone. Beneath the crib, a bloody pacifier glistened in the dark, and in the arms of those figures, my daughter, trembling, crying, too small to fight. They weren't Ryan. They weren't Maya. They weren't Eli. They were hell itself. Story 4. I used to believe that the dead left us quietly. A last breath, a closing of eyes, a vanishing into memory. But grief taught me otherwise. When my mother passed, it wasn't peaceful. The air in our house turned heavy, as if her presence lingered in every corner. My father refused to move her things, her clothes still hanging in the closet, her perfume still sitting on the dresser. He claimed he could still hear her voice in the hallways at night. At first, I thought it was the weight of mourning, the tricks of a tired mind, until I heard it too. It began as whispers, faint and low, barely audible over the creak of the house. Then came the footsteps, soft, deliberate, pacing in the rooms above even when no one was there. Sometimes I'd wake to the smell of her perfume, as though she had just brushed past me. One night, I saw her. I was standing in the kitchen when the hallway light flickered. For the briefest moment, my mother's silhouette stood in the doorway, her posture unmistakable. Her head tilted, her hands clasped the way they always had when she was about to speak. But when I blinked, she was gone. My father insisted we treat it as a blessing. "She's still with us," he said, smiling through tears. But I felt only dread. The presence grew bolder. Objects moved on their own. Doors slammed in empty rooms. Shadows stretched where they shouldn't. And always, that faint, lingering smell of her perfume, now soured, sharp like something burning. Then came the night I woke to find her sitting at the end of my bed. Her face was pale, unnaturally smooth, like wax melting under heat. Her eyes were wide, unblinking, too dark, too empty. When she opened her mouth, no words came, only a sound, a low, distorted hum that vibrated in my bones. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. The hum grew louder, rattling the glass of the window, shaking the walls. I clenched my eyes shut, praying it would stop. When I opened them again, the room was empty, but the sheets were still indented, as if someone had just risen from the mattress. My father finally admitted the truth. He hadn't been holding on to her memory. He had been calling her back. In his desperation, he had turned to rituals, strange books, whispered prayers, objects arranged in symbols I couldn't understand. He wanted her spirit to remain. He thought love could anchor her here. But what returned wasn't my mother. The last night I spent in that house is seared into me like a scar. The storm outside howled, lightning tearing across the sky. Inside, the air reeked of something acrid, metallic, suffocating. I found my father in the living room, kneeling before a crude circle of candles and photos, chanting words that scraped like glass against my ears. And then the temperature dropped. A shape emerged from the shadows, my mother's figure, but wrong, twisted. Her head bent at an unnatural angle, her limbs moving like broken marionette strings, her smile stretched too wide, her teeth glinting in the candlelight. "See?" my father whispered, his voice trembling with joy. "She's here," but the thing turned toward me. Its eyes were hollow sockets, black and endless. It raised a hand, and the candles blew out all at once. The darkness was absolute, broken only by the sound. That same low hum, now deafening, vibrating through the floor, through my chest, through my skull. My father screamed. Not words, just a raw, primal scream that was swallowed by the dark. I stumbled backward, crashing into furniture, clawing my way to the door. I didn't look back. I couldn't. When I finally burst outside, the storm soaked me to the bone. I ran until my lungs felt like fire, until the house was nothing but a silhouette behind me. I never saw my father again. The house was found abandoned, the doors locked from the inside. The police said there was no sign of him, but I know better. Sometimes, late at night, I still smell it. That perfume, faint, sour, burning. And sometimes, when the lights flicker, I see her shadow in the corner of the room, head tilted, hands clasped, waiting. Not my mother. Never my mother. What he brought back wasn't love. It was hunger.